Fixed width layout. Fixed width layout designs do not change size as the user increases or decreases the size of their browser window. Measurements tend to be given in pixels. Now I'm going to give you advantages of using a fixed width and then the disadvantage of using same. The advantages: 1. Pixel values are accurate at controlling size and positioning of elements. The designer also has far greater control over the appearance and position of items on the page than with liquid layout. We will come to liquid layout later. You can also control the length of lines of text regardless of the size of the user's window. And the last is the size of an image will always remain the same relative to the rest of the page, because you are using what? You are using fixed layout. The disadvantage: you can end up with big gaps around the edge of your page. If the user screen is a much higher resolution than the designer's screen, the page can look smaller and text can be harder to read. That we explained it when we were explaining the layouts, both relative and we're explaining the positioning. If a user increases font sizes, text might not fit into the allotted spaces, especially the screen devices, these mobile devices. When you increase the font sizes or you try to zoom in, they will not fit in the spaces. The design works best on devices that have a size or resolution similar to that of the desktop. Yes, you get the best experience and the best feeling when you have the same type of device that the designer used in creating. The page will often take up more vertical space than a liquid layout with the same content. That's for what? For fixed layout. Now let's talk about liquid layout. What is liquid layout? Liquid layout designs stretch and contract as their user increases or decreases the size of their browser window. They tend to use percentages. Now, advantages of liquid layout. Pages expand to fill the entire browser window, so there are no spaces around the page on a large screen. So this solves one of the disadvantages of the fixed. If the user has a small window, the page can contract to fit in without the user having to scroll to the side. The design is tolerant of users setting font sizes larger than the designer's intended size. You see, the advantages of the liquid layout has answered all the disadvantages or some disadvantages of the fixed layout. Some of the disadvantages is if you do not control the width of sections of the page, then the design can look very different than you intended. If the user has a wide window, lines of text can become very long, which makes them harder to read. If the user has a very narrow window, words may be squashed and you can end up with few words on each line. And if a fixed width item, like an image, is in a box that is too small to hold it, the image can overflow over the text. Now, a fixed width layout. To create a fixed width layout, the width of the main boxes on a page will usually be specified in pixels. I'm going to show you example of several elements, each of which uses an ID or class attribute to indicate its purpose on the page. The results of both the fixed and liquid layout look similar. To get a real feel of them, you need to view them in your browser and see how they react when you adjust the size of the browser window. The fixed width layout will stay the same width no matter what size the browser window is, whereas the liquid layout will stretch to fill the screen. The HTML is the same for both the fixed layout, okay, and then the liquid layout. Now, this is one example we are supposed to look at to explain the layout, okay. So we are going straight into our text editor to do this practice. Alright, so I have a div that has the header, the logo, and the nav. Okay, so this is the nav bar, and I also have another div. I have a lot of divs here in columns, and I have the footer. As well. Okay, so let me save this and then go to the CSS and set my rules with the new set of code. Let me save this as well, and now refresh my browser. Now this is what you're going to see. Okay, so you see this portion is the header, which contains the logo together with the nav bar. There's one div here, another div, another div, another div. So 3 columns, and then there's a footer. Okay, and this is 960. So let me try and reduce the window sizes for you to see. So you can see this is fixed, right? The rule for the body element is used to fix the width of the page at 960 pixels, and it is centered by setting the left and the right margins to auto. Okay, the main boxes on the page have a margin of 10 pixels to create a gap between them. We are still on the explanation of the practice we just did in our browser. The navigation, okay, the feature and the footer panels stretch to the width of the containing element, which is the 960. Okay, so we do not need to specify a width for them. The 3 columns are each 300 pixels and use the float property, which allows them to sit next to each other. Sometimes an extra HTML element is used to contain the page rather than fixing the width of the body. This allows the background of the browser window to have a different color than the background of the content. The liquid layout. The liquid layout uses percentages to specify the width of each box so that the design will stretch to fit the size of the screen. When trying this in your browser, remember to make the browser window smaller and larger to see how it stretches. So this is an example of the liquid. So we are going to actually do this in our browser as well, okay, for us to see how this one is also going to render this particular liquid layout. Now the same HTML element, but I'm going to change the CSS and now use the liquid, and that we told you the liquid also uses the percentages instead of the pixels. So I'm going to save this, okay, then I'll refresh my browser. You see, you usually see this is rather stretching the more than that of the fixed we use. That of the fixed we use was stated at 960 pixels and it stayed there. It wasn't increasing at all. But look at this one. This one has stretched and it has spanned from this end to this place. the first one was like half of my screen. So let me try and resize this one. So whilst I resize it, I want to see how my columns and my this thing is going to, you see, is going to conform. It contracts based on the size of the window, but in the fix it wasn't contracting this way. It was at one place, it was fixed. Okay, so this one can be, let's say, a mobile view, this one can be, let's say, tablet, and then this can be PC or desktop or any other device. So as a designer, you will have to decide on which one you want. Okay, which of the layout style will you want? Will you want a fixed, or you want the liquid?